We have been cooling down for the last 4,000 years. So if people say, oh, the planet's warming, well, it's all about when you start the measurements. If we look at the last 38 years, there has been no change in temperature. If we look in the last 150 years, we've had 3 warming periods and 3 cooling periods with a total warmth of about 0.6 degrees Celsius. Now, I wonder why it warms. I mean, 1850, what happened then? Oh yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. Do you think it's going to warm or cool after a Little Ice Age? Of course it's going to warm. Yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. We have been cooling down for the last 4,000 years. So if people say, oh, the planet's warming, well, it's all about when you start the measurements. If we look at the last 38 years, there has been no when you start the measurements. If we look at the last 38 years, there has been no change in temperature. If we look in the last 150 years, we've had 3 warming periods and 3 cooling periods with a total warmth of about 0.6 degrees Celsius. Now, I wonder why it warms. I mean, 1850, what happened then? Oh yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. Do you think it's going to warm or cool after a Little Ice Age? Little Ice Age. 1850, what happened then? Oh yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. Do you think it's going to warm or cool after a Little Ice Age? Of course it's going to warm. So if you start taking measurements from 1850 in the Industrial Revolution, we have been warming. If you take measurements from the medieval warming, we've been cooling. We've cooled about 5 degrees since then. If you take measurements from the Roman warming, we've cooled about 5 degrees. So as soon as someone tells you, oh, it's warming, the reply you give is, since when? We have been cooling down. We have been cooling.
Catastrophists are getting wrong about CO2.
More CO2 is good for the world. It's not bad for the world. And so it's absurd to be trying. It's absurd to be trying to reduce CO2 with all the other problems, with the absurd projections of lower costs for renewable energy. It's clearly a lie. It's not true.
And explain to us, how is, in your opinion, as a Princeton professor and climate scientist and physicist, how is CO2 good for the world?
Well, for the first thing, if you look at geological history, and you've got lots of good geologists here in Australia who've made this point many times, we're in a CO2 famine now compared to what is normal for plants. And just about any plant, if you give it more CO2, and a lot more, it will do better. In my country, most greenhouses double or triple the amount of CO2, and they have to pay for it. It's not cheap. But it's worth investing in it because the plants grow so much better. The quality of the flowers and the fruits are so much better. And the situation is even better outside of greenhouses because in addition to the benefits you get in a greenhouse where you have plenty of water, you get resistance to drought. And that's particularly important in Australia, which has large areas that are quite arid. And if you look from satellites, Australia is a poster boy of greening of the entire world, especially Western Australia. So it's unbelievable that they've managed to turn this beneficial gas, a part of life, into a threat. You know, they talk about carbon pollution. I can't imagine what they're talking about. We're made of carbon. And we breathe out 2 pounds of CO2 a day, each of us, right? 8 billion people, 2 pounds a day. Multiply that by the number of days in the year. And in fact, many of them say, well, people are the real problem. It's not the CO2. We've got too many people. And really, we can't have more than 1 billion people in the world. So I look around in a room, they're not even the 7 out of 8 of us here on this show enough to reduce the population.
Bachelor of Arts degree.
Is it a political science degree?
Yes.
So how do you get a Bachelor of Arts? Isn't it true you have a science degree from Yale?
Bachelor of Arts degree.
Is it a political science degree?
Yes.
So how do you get a Bachelor of Arts in a science? It's not really science. So I think it's somewhat appropriate. Isn't it true you have a science degree from Yale?
Bachelor of Arts degree.
Is it a political science degree?
Yes.
So how do you get a Bachelor of Arts in a science?
Well, it's liberal arts education and degree. It's a bachelor.
Okay, so it's not really science. So I think it's somewhat appropriate that somebody with a pseudoscience degree is here pushing pseudoscience in front of our committee today. Let's get back to the science of it. Let me ask you this. What's the consensus on parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere?
About 406 today.
Okay, 406. Are you aware?
350 being the level that scientists have said is dangerous.
Are you aware that since mammals have walked the planet, the average has been over 1,000 parts per million?
Yeah, but we weren't walking the planet. Let me just share with you that we now know that definitively at no point during at least the past 800,000 years has atmospheric CO2 been as high as it is today.
The reason you chose 800,000 years ago is because for 200 million years before that, it was greater than it is today. And I'm going to submit it for the record.
Yeah, but there weren't human beings. I mean, there was a different world, folks. We didn't have 7 billion people.
So how did it get to 2,000 parts per million if we humans weren't here?
Because there were all kinds of geologic events happening on Earth which spewed
Did
out.
geology stop when we got on the planet?
Mr. Chairman, this is just not a serious conversation.
Your testimony is not serious.
down for the last 4,000 measurements. There has been, if we look in the last 3 warming and 3 cooling periods, with a total warmth of about 0.6 degrees Celsius.
That's understandable.
New book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. It's astonishing if you're at all intimidated by Bill Gates' new book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. It's astonishing if you're at all intimidated by just the subject of climate change and a bit confused by the differing views. This is for you. It is so clear where we're at right now and where we need to go. And it's just such a gift that one of the smartest people on earth has made it so accessible for literally every person on the planet to understand the subject and know where we need to go moving forward. And Bill's an optimist, and it's so easy to read stuff which sounds very pessimistic around the subject, but there are ways for us to move forward, and this book outlines it. Highly, highly recommend it.